Yes. Okay, the structure sa makita. Okay, so we have your glycerol. Okay. Oh God. Okay. Your glycerol is this one. Example, CH2, CH, and then we have your CH2. Di ba mo itong glycerol? Okay, so this is your glycerol. And then when, okay, so you have an O there. O. O. Okay, OH. All right, so this is your glycerol. And then when we have your fatty acid, okay, if your fatty acid is this, di ba your fatty acid is, ano man siya, is this one. C double bond O, and then you have your R. Because the O, because your fatty acid, di ba, is a carboxylic group. So we have C, double bond O, and then you have O, H, and then you have your R group, okay, which is the nonpolar group. Admit. Okay, so when that when that bonds to our glycerol, then that becomes like this. CHO, then the bubble O. So the OH from your fatty acid and the H from your glycerol, then that will form a water. But this will become your triacyl glycerols. C double bond O, then we have R. Okay, so this linkage, this one, because our ester linkage is R O O R, right? We have an R group, and then you have your oxygen, and then you have your double bond O, and then you have your R group. So this one, this linkage, okay, and this linkage is your ester linkage. Okay, so this linkage and this linkage forms an ester linkage. An ester is ROOR. So that's why it's an ester linkage. So how many ester linkage are there?
Three, mom.
We have three. Okay, we have three because we have ester linkage 1, 2, and we have 3. So there are 3 ester linkages in your triacyl glycerols. Now your triacyl glycerols functions as an energy storage. Remember that your glycogen in human, in animals, gives us energy for only 1 day, while your triacylglycerols gives us energy for a month. Okay, so remember that your lipids has someone to the pit. Okay, has many functions. It can be energy storage, so which is the triacylglycerols. Then we have membrane lipids, emulsification lipids, chemical messenger lipids, protective coating lipids, and we have transport lipids. So we have 6 functions of our lipids, and then we have already tackled one. So we have triacyl glycerols, that energy storage lipids. Just like carbohydrates, 'di ba carbohydrates functions as structure, gives structure, energy storage, and then yes, that's it. It gives us energy storage, and then we have the structure. For our lipids, we have also energy storage, and then we also have the membrane lipids, which are the phospholipids, sphingoglycolipids, and this cholesterol. So today we are going to tackle this one, the membrane lipids. Okay, so that's it. You review about the unsaturation, the PUFAS, MUFAS, SFA. Okay, again, so your fatty acid has a polar head and a non-polar tail. When we say non-polar, is it soluble to water? When we say polar, non-polar, is it soluble to water?
Dili, ma'am.
Okay, non-polar. Now, when we say non-polar, it's not soluble to water because water is,
Polar.
okay, water is a polar molecule, so it will only dissolve polar substances also. This part is non-polar, so it is insoluble. Insoluble meaning not soluble with water. When we say also non-polar, it means hydro hydrophobic. Hydrophobic. Okay. Phobic. And then when we say polar, it's we says hydrophilic. Hydrophilic. Hydrophobic meaning from the word phobia, okay, fear. So fear of water, so that's it, non-polar. Then hydrophilic, water loving. So they are polar molecules, hydrophilic. Okay, so take note that one also. All right, so we have this one, your fatty acid, your glycerol. Okay, your glycerol. So we have one, two, three. We have three carbons in your glycerol. And that three carbons, when you form a triacyl glycerol, should be bonded by three fatty acids. So fatty acids can be, dapat parehas jud ang fatty acids na i-bond sa atong glycerol or dili. Dapat should, example, if that one is 18 zeros, if that one is ano, if this fatty acid is 18,0, this should be also 18,0, and this one 18,0. Or pwede lahi-lahi. Pwede ka di 18,1, 18 is to 1, and this one is 12 is to 3. Pwede?
Dili guro, ma'am.
Okay, so fatty acids in a triacyl glycerol could be different. Pwede bisan unsa. Pwede pod. 'Di ba we have that one, a homo and then hetero.
Yes, ma'am.
Sama to okay. Yes. So it means that, oh, example with this triacyl glycerols, look at the fatty acids. Are they the same?
No, ma'am.
No, it's not the same. We have this one which is saturated, 18,0. Then we have this one, 18,1. So monounsaturated. And what about the third fatty acid? It's
Polyunsaturated, ma'am.
okay. It's polyunsaturated because of two double bonds. Okay, so pwede siya maglahi-lahi class. All right, again. So we have the fats and oils. When we say fat, it is, what's the state?
So, kuan siya, ma'am, kanang saturated, which is like solid.
Okay, fats is solid just like your butter. Isagol ninyo sa inyong corn. Like margarine. Okay, it's solid. Then we have oils. It's
Liquid, ma'am.
Liquid.
okay, so it is liquid at room temp. Okay, at room temp. So what's the room temperature? Sa mo room temperature, that is 25, okay, degrees Celsius. All right. So, okay, look at here. Take a look in this diagram. So, which oil is the healthiest oil?
Kuan, ma'am, kanang olive oil.
This one? Who
Yes.
else?
Coconut oil,
Avocado
Pinaka-healthy. As in,
oil.
pinaka-healthy.
Canola.
Canola.
Coconut oil.
Coconut oil. Class, darang coconut oil. Coconut oil is 92% saturated. When we say
I'm
saturated, is it good fat or bad fat?
bad fat, ma'am. Bad fat, ma'am.
Okay, they are bad fats. So we have the healthiest is
Canola oil.
canola oil. Okay, we have the so many canola oil. Search sa nato class. Canola olive oil na dyan nabawan class. Canola oil. Ah. Mm.
Vegetable.
Example ay minula man eh. Canola, vegetable ang canola. Okay, it's this one is canola oil.
Katugurong white ma'am, katug yellow bitaw kaayo.
Tara class unay canola oil, canola oil. Kana kang minola, tanaw na to ng minola. Minola oil. Lauric oil, din ang minola. Lauric oil. Okay, let's look daw kung lauric oil asa man na. Wala man pud.
Premium na premium coconut oil, ma'am. Basin bilang na siya sa coconut oil, ma'am.
Coconut oil. 50% acid in coconut juice. Unsa ga itong lauric fatty acid? Pila ga ito lauric? When we say lauric 12-0,
Yes, ma'am.
ni 12-0 pwede ang minola. So, kuan pwede gihapon na. Lauric oils have in common that their main fatty acid is 12-0. So, kung 12-0, that is saturated. Na, dapat gihapon mga bad fat ng minola.
Oh,
Kay
yes, ma'am.
12-0. I see. Okay, so that's it. Lauric oil, minola. Yung mahal kayo. Olive oil, so 100% healthy daw siya. Okay, so that one. So the healthiest is your canola oil. And then ang ato na ilhan ani nga oil ra kay aning olive oil. So olive oil is ano pa siya? Healthy po siya. Whereas your pinaka bad fat is your coconut oil. So again, it does not matter on the amount of fats you eat or you take. It matters on the type of fat. Okay, so is it bad fat or is it good fat? And then we have that one, the nuts. Okay, so nuts are very healthy. Yeah, it's true that it has many oils, it has many fats, but the fats there are good fats. Okay, so kinsa naka-answer ani sa gahapon na exam, we have we have the aspartame. So the olestra ang nakakanito add
Or just
because
covered.
all of them are artificial sugars, and then olestra is your artificial lipids. Okay. Now let's go to our okay. All right, so we also have the reactions of our triacyl glycerols. We have oxidation. When we say oxidation, that is in addition with oxygen. Halogenation, we have reaction with the addition of our halogens. The F, Cl, the Br, the I, they are your halogens. Okay, so this time let's move on to our membrane lipids. Okay, so we know that we have the cell. Okay, what is a cell? So what is the cell? Okay, what is cell? When we unsa man ang cell, 'di ba nakatakol na tag cell? Wala na wala. Hello, napako.
Kuan siya, ma'am, the smallest unit that can live on its own.
Okay, cell is a basic unit of life. Yes, the smallest unit. Okay, so we have that a cell. And then when we say a cell, our cell is surrounded by a membrane. Okay, so have you watched the video? Okay. Our cell is surrounded by a membrane. Okay, we have that one. Cell. Okay, the membrane helps to protect. Okay, so this is your cell, and then outside that one is your membrane. Kaning na coating class ba? Like katong example ganina, the balloon. So ang katong surface ato sa gawas sa balloon is your membrane. Cell membrane. So the cell membrane separates inside the cell. So what's inside the cell? The mitochondrion. We have the ano pa jud? Kato itong mga gipang klase sa una class, the centriole, lysosomes. So the RNA. Okay, so those are inside the cell, and then your cell membrane separates of the inside of the cell and the outside of the cell. So that is your protective layer in your cell. So that is your cell membrane. Now our cell membrane is made up of what we call phospholipids. So your cell is made up of phospholipids, and your phospholipids is just like your micelle, katong example na to sa soap. Okay, just like this one, this is a micelle. So just like our cell membrane works like this. So it has, I know, it has a polar head and it has a non-polar tail. So the non-polar tail, use ibagpatunga na sila klase. They are in a lipid, in a membrane. So our, may I see, I have, okay, wait sa. Okay. Alright. Membrane proteins. Okay, this one. Alright, this one. Okay, you see this one, class. This is your phospholipids, and in your cell maghimo na siya duha. So that's why we call it bilipid layer. Bilayer. Okay, lipid bilayer. So bilayer because it's two. We have this one. This is a phospholipid, and then we have a phospholipid. So magduha sila kabok in order that the tails will be inside, and then we have the heads. The heads are this one, will be outside. Again, a membrane has a polar head, and then we have a non-polar tail. So just like your micelle, katong sa soap, it has a polar head and a non-polar tail. The difference of your micelle and your lipid and your lipid phospholipids is that the polar head in your soap, in your micelle is, okay, what makes up the polar head of your micelle? Tanong nahimo siyang polar atong micelle. Because ano to na polar siya, class? Kaya nga na polar inyong micelle because of when we say polar, so it is soluble with water. Ano, class? It has oxygen. When you see oxygen in your molecule, and especially oxygen and hydrogen, so it is a polar molecule. That is a polar molecule. When you say, oh, in your molecule. Okay, so look at this one. This is your micelle. Okay, so what makes up the polar, what makes our polar region in our micelle? What makes up the polar region in your micelle? We have the carboxylate ion or the carboxylic acid. Your carboxylic acid makes our micelle polar. Our polar head. So this is your polar head. And then we have the tails, the tails which is non-polar. So just like your fatty acid, saan to? Just like your fatty acid, it has a polar and non-polar. Okay. So this one, class, this is your fatty acid. You see this one, letter A. Okay. Kita, class? We have that
Yes,
one.
Miss Ma'am.
So this one is a polar region, and this one is your non-polar. You see this one, non-polar. Kakita mo og oxygen here? Wala. So this is your non-polar group. Now this one, this carboxylic group is your polar group. Now your fatty acid and your micelle has, your micelle, especially the micelle, has carboxylic acid. So carboxylic acid makes our micelle, the soap head become polar. So this one. So this one is a polar. And then while your lipid, the polar region, the polar What makes it polar is your this one. What makes your what makes your lipids or phospholipids polar is your this one. Phosphate and your alcohol. It makes it polar because when we have phosphate, that is double bond O, and then we have an O here. Okay, wait. All right, then we have an O here and then an O minus here. So that is your phosphate. So it has a lot of oxygen. And when we have an alcohol, so that one, so this is your alcohol. So this makes up our phospholipids polar. So unlike to our micelle, the thing that makes it polar is your carboxylic acid, and to your fatty acid, what makes it polar is also your carboxylic acid. So we have this one. Okay, so let's go back. So we are now here. We are in phospholipids. It contains one or more fatty acids. Okay, so how many fatty acids present in your glycerol in your phospholipid?
Kuan siya, ma'am. One or more?
One or more. Okay, from here, kaning ano, we have how many fatty acids?
Three? Two?
Okay, we have here two. We have fatty acid, and then we have we have two fatty acids. Two fatty acids, and then also, so when we are in our triacyl glycerols, this becomes what? 'Di ba fatty acid man pud ni kung katong naa sa atong triacyl glycerols. But here, when we are in phospholipids, there are only two fatty acids, and the third one is your phosphate and then your alcohol group. Okay, so that is a phospholipid. Now, also, we have this one is this molecule is your glycerophospholipid because of your backbone. The backbone is glycerol. Okay, just like your triacyl glycerol, the backbone is glycerol here. So we call this one as glycerophospholipid. Phospholipid. While this one also is another phospholipid, but the backbone is, what is the backbone? The backbone class more gani ano niya gyud? Framework. Unsa iyang framework? Pinakabukog. Dito nag-attach mo parent ba? Parent bone. Okay, unsay backbone ani niya class? We have, you read this one.
Spingus,
Okay, sphingosine.
spingusin.
Yes, that is a sphingosine. So we have two types, okay? We have this one is a phospholipid, and this one also is a phospholipid. What differs them is the backbone. The backbone here is glycerol. That's why we call it glycerophospholipid. While this one, the backbone here is a sphingosine. This one, okay, look at the difference, class, ha? Look at the difference. When we have your sphingosine as your backbone, it's very, dako ang sphingosine that it can occupy this one. If you compare here in your glycerol, this one will be your fatty acid, right? If you compare that one to glycerol as your backbone. Duha ka fatty acid unta ni siya, but your sphingosine is a big molecule and that it can occupy the first fatty acid. So that's why in as when we have sphingosine as your backbone, how many fatty acids it has?
Usara ma'am ay 1.
Only one. Okay, only one. Then when we have a glycerol, we have two fatty acids. Okay, again, remember the fatty acids can be bisan unsa. It can be saturated, monounsaturated, or polyunsaturated. So we have it can be hetero. If this one is 18,0, then this can be 12 is to 1. Okay. Or this one is 14 is to 1 is to 0. Okay. Bisan unsa. And then again, so when we have your sphingosine, it has the same phosphate and then alcohol group. Okay. So again, determine the polar and the non-polar group in your phospholipid. So what are the polar group here? Polar. What's the polar region? Okay, when we say polar, hydrophilic. Okay, polar. Okay. Now we have this one class. A polar molecule is a molecule in which one end of the molecule is slightly positive, and then we have while the other is end is slightly negative. Now we have here our water. Water is H2O. H2O. So that's one. This one is your structure of your water. So it's a band, okay? It's band shape. Now, because our oxygen here is electronegative, when we say electronegative, kusgan kay siya that it can attract many molecules, especially the H. So it's negative. So that one will be your partially negative. And then this one, your H will be partially positive. Positive and then negative, then what will happen? It will attract, diba? It will attract just like a magnet, positive, positive, negative, north, south. Okay, positive, negative. Then the direction of the energy will go to the one who has greater electronegativity or who has mas negative kusgan. So that's why we have an arrow to the oxygen because oxygen is more electronegative than our hydrogen. So if we have a slightly positive and slightly negative molecule, a part in your molecule, then that we can say that ano, it is a polar. So we have that oxygen. Another that makes a polar molecule is your Cl. Okay. Now, Cl molecule, okay, if we have HCl, HCl is very electronegative. Okay, electronegativity refers, okay, please read.
Refers to the ability of an atom to attract shared electrons in a covalent. The higher the value of the electronegativity, the more strongly that element attracts the, the shared electrons. Thus, fluorine is the most electronegative element.
Okay. Now, so that one, it's the ability of your atom. Electroneg- Okay, this one makita.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
12 raman data kabuk. Okay, so electronegativity refers to the ability of an atom. Okay, so these are your atoms, the elements. Okay. Okay, so if we have now class, if we have in your periodic table, there are about 119. Okay ha, 119, I'm not sure. But sige, if we have 119 elements in your periodic table, elements, the elements are the hydrogen, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, titanium, thallium, platinum, silver, gold. They are your elements. Now, when if we have 119 elements in your periodic table, so mainly there are also 119 atoms. Okay, so electronegativity refers to the ability of an atom to attract, okay, ability of an atom to attract a shared electron. Okay, to attract an electron or to attract other atoms, because atoms, in an atom there are electrons, there are protons, and then there are neutrons. So we have that one. When we have that one, electronegativity is the ability of an atom to attract other atoms, okay, or electrons in a covalent bond. Covalent meaning you have the non-metal and non-metal. Okay, we have, or ionic, we have the metal and the non-metal. So in a periodic table, there are here, as we can see here, okay, wait sa Chod. So in a periodic table, we have that one. Sus. Okay, so we have this one. Now we have your periodic table. In a periodic table, okay, there are metals. Where are the metals here? Okay, so we have here your metals, metal group, and then you have your non-metals here. Non-metals. Non-metals, and then you have here your semi-metals. It can be, it acts as a metal and at the same time non-metal, so 50-50. This one, so when we have a covalent bonding, it is a bond between non-metals. So we have an O and then we have an H. Is it covalent bond or not? This it is covalent because hydrogen is non-metal. It's the only non-metal that is located here in your metal group. Now we have this one, they are non-metals here. Class, kita ako ang kuan class. Power ako. Makita
Yes,
ninyo?
ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
kita
ma'am. Yes,
kita
ma'am.
mo sa kuan sa periodic table.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now if we have if we have Br and HBr, is it covalent? Covalent siya kung non-metal plus non-metal. Is it covalent? Is it a
Well,
covalent? Ha?
dili man ata, ma'am. Kay ang H, ma'am, ay
Okay, again, H is the only atom or an only element that is that is non-metal nga naabot siya sa metal group. So here, this one are metal groups and then your H is dili na siya. Non-metal na siya.
Okay.
Now, is it covalent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what about your NH? NH3, is it covalent bonding? Is it covalent?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's it. So it's covalent. So when we have the CH, is it covalent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, that's good. Now, when we say non-polar, all right. Okay, covalent bonding. Now, when we say non-polar, the highest electronegativity. Okay, so when we say increasing electronegativity, kinsa ang pinakataas og electronegativity?
Murag fluorine.
This one, the fluorine. Look, fluorine is here. Nakita mo sa araw class? Kumupadto daw ka dito, mutaas daw ang electronegativity. Mauna siya, kung ang electronegativity, mas kusog na siya mo bond, mas kusog na siya mo attract, kusog na siya mo bond sa mga molecules. So we have the fluorine as pinakakusog mo bond og mga laing mga atoms. Then, so if we have an if we have a fluorine and then bonded to an H, is that a polar or non-polar?
Non-polar.
Polar.
Polar, ma'am.
Polar siya, ma'am.
Polar. Kung electronegative taas ba kay electronegativity atong fluorine. Okay, that's polar. Now, what if we have oxygen bonded to H? Is it polar?
One is non-polar naman ata siya, ma'am.
Okay, so when we have the F, the fluorine, then we have the oxygen, dira part bonded to an H, that's polar. Pagsugod na sa N and H, NH, is it polar? Layo na siya sa electronegativity class.
Kuha na siya.
It's non-polar. Non-polar na siya. What about CH? Is it polar?
Non-polar na, ma'am.
Non-polar. Non-polar. What about HBr? Is it polar?
Non-polar na siya, ma'am. Kay distance naman kayo. Ay, yes, ma'am. Polar. Polar
Polar.
siya,
Polar,
ma'am.
ma'am. Polar.
Na siya sa tumoy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that's it. Alright. So, mao na siya ha. Polar and non-polar. Now, also, when we have example our phosphate. Oh, phosphate ion. Okay. Then we have an ana siya diri. Then we have that one. Okay, this phosphate, our phosphorus, and then we have our oxygen. Is it polar?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, daghan kayong oxygen. Ipang-add ni mo na
Non-polar.
siya. Dako kay na kini man class na ani sila yung mga values, electronegativity values. Magkadako kay electronegative values, the electronegative noon kay siya, mas mo attract na noon kay siya, mas mo share noon siya sa iyahang electrons, mas mo bond siya towards other elements or towards other atoms. So it means that it's polar. When it is polar, it's very reactive. It can bond to other atoms. So this one is very polar because lots of oxygen. Okay, ha? Now, when we have the CH only, is it polar? Is it polar or non-polar?
Polar, ma'am.
Tara ang C, O, layo na siya sa O. Ang O ug ang F, dira gasugod, dira ra
Polar,
tamad ang, diri ra
Kwa-
tamad ang polar.
Non-polar na siya, ma'am, kay CH this
Non-polar. Okay, non-polar. When we have C, double C, C. Is it polar, non-polar?
non-polar, ma'am.
Non-polar. So since it's non-polar, that explains your fatty acid tail, the tail of your fatty acid as non-polar. Okay, this one. Okay, that's why this one is non-polar because, di ba, it has C and then C, 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 C. Kita?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have C every ending, di ba? C man na siya, class?
Yes, ma'am.
C, the C. Okay. That's why it's non-polar because C and C, that's the bond there is non-polar. Dili na siya, gamay ra kay siya electronegativity. Then, is it covalent or not? Is it covalent or ionic? It's
covalent.
Okay.
okay, CC is covalent. Tara, oh. Ang C is non-metal. Then non-metal pag yun. Non-metal, non-metal. That's covalent. Okay. Alright. Okay. So, asa na mo sa inyong inorganic class?
Kami may nag-report, ma'am.
Unsa man yung gi-report?
I mean, ma'am, kanang by chapter, bitaw mi, ma'am, kanang nag-groupings mi, ma'am. Nanami sa
So, asa na mo natap?
chapter 9 na to, ma'am. Pero nakalimot na sa
Sa covalent na, ma'am.
Unsa ay topic anang chapter 9?
Covalent bonding and orbitals.
Ay, I see. Okay. So, kabalo na mo covalent bonding.
Pero
Okay.
kuan ma'am, di pa kay may sana ay. Need pag kanang kanang
Need pag further explanation, ma'am.
Okay, so that one, huh? All right. So this one, the phosphate and the alcohol. Okay. So in your phospholipids, determine the polar and non-polar group here in your glycerol phospholipid. The lipid part, the non-polar is your this one, the fatty acid, and then your glycerol is your non-polar group. Non-polar. Again, it has oxygen, but it has oxygen. We have ester linkage here, right? It's polar. But again, fatty acid is very long. The non-polar dominates the polar region. So that's why it is still classified as non-polar. Then we have your phosphate and alcohol. Your phosphate, di ba? P, double bond O, O, and then O here, and then O connected there. So it's your polar or non-polar? Is it polar or non-polar?
polar.
polar man
It's
ata ma'am.
polar. Okay, it's polar. Okay, we have the polar. Now again, what about here? Determine the polar and non-polar group in your sphingosine. Determine the polar region. Polar region is your phosphate and your alcohol. That's polar. Okay, ha, tanaw na tanaw. Then we have this one as non-polar. Your fatty acid is non-polar. When we say non-polar,
Hydroxylic siya.
hydrophobic, water fearing, hydrophobic, phobia, fear, phobia. So hydrophobic. Then we have your polar region. When we say polar region, that's Okay, hydrophilic. Take note na class, duha. Okay, hydrophilic is for polar. Hydrophobic is for non-polar. Now we have this one. We have fatty acids. Okay. So that's one. They are phospholipids. Just that the backbone here is glycerol and the backbone here is sphingosine. So if we have our backbone as glycerol, we call that glycerophospholipid. And then we call this one as sphingo. Okay, pang-adra ni mo class. Phospholipid. They are phospholipid, kita.
Yes, ma'am.
Glycerol from your backbone. Sphingo from your backbone. Okay. Now, two ester groups, ester linkage, one ester linkage, and then this one is phosphate linkage. Okay, phosphate. Now, later. Okay, so we have this one, glycerol phospholipid. Okay, please read. We have John Lloyd.
Glycerophospholipids. Ay, tama. A glycerophospholipid is a lipid that contains two fatty acids and a phosphate group esterified to a glycerol molecule and an alcohol esterified to the phosphate group. Um,
Okay. Then we have all attachments.
all attachments bonds between groups in a glycerophospholipid are ester linkages. And
Okay, ester linkages. Take note of that. Then we have
glycerophospholipids have four ester linkages as contrasted to three ester linkages in tricyl glycerols.
triacyl.
Sorry.
Okay, so again, it has four ester linkages. Now let's go back. Okay, so this is an ester linkage. One, ester linkage. Two, ester linkage. Gihapon day class ng phosphate and then your glycerol. We have three, ester linkage. Four. Okay, you see that one? So in your glycerophospholipid, we have four ester linkages. What about your sphingophospholipid? How many ester linkages?
3 siya, ma'am.
3, ma'am.
2, 3. Okay, so that's 3. Now, what about your triacyl glycerols? How many is ester linkages?
3 man at.
Triacyl glycerols.
3 ra ma'am.
Okay, your glycerol ang backbone. Then we have two. Okay, we have three fatty acid ion, Fa, Fa, then Fa. So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Thank you, John Lloyd. So that's it, your glycerophospholipid. Okay, this one, money siya. Triacyl glycerol. Triacyl glycerol, we have three ester linkages. Then we have glycerophospholipid. We have four ester linkages. Okay, that one. Okay, so okay, please read Tuwis. Tuwis.
Wala may tuwis diri, ma'am.
Ay, Twiko. Nay, Twiko. Twiko. Robert. Like, dito nga.
Glyco. Tuwi ko na, ma'am. Dili na tuwis.
Alay, Twiko.
Siya, okay.
Lahi ito nga klase na. Pukoy Tuwis.
Oh. Nawala, ma'am. Oh, sige, okay. Glycerophospholipids. Glycerophospholipids undergo hydrolysis and ano ba, saponification reactions in a manner similar to that for tria, triacetic glycerols. Klaro. The alcohol attached to the phosphate group in a glycophospholipid is usually one of the three amino alcohols: choline, ethanolamine, or serine, respectively known as phosphatid. Ma'am, lisod kayo basahon, ma'am. So naman yung tag-asa
Dayon.
man kayo ni ma'am. Phosphatid. Saan di ba? Choline, phosphatidyltanolamines, and phosphatidylserines.
Alright, so that's it. So gahapon na
Kaya
question
ma'am
nato
kay.
no nga hydrolysis. Na question gahapon dito hydrolysis is the addition of your hydrogen. Okay, so we have that one. Hydrolysis and we have this saponification. When we say saponification, that is in addition with your salt acid. Example, we have sodium carboxylic acid, carboxylate. So katong sa atong soap, the reaction in your soap making is saponification. Okay, so that one. Now it says that, okay, when we have a phosphate group, okay, when the alcohol attached to the phosphate group in a glycophospholipid is usually
Oh,
one of three amino alcohols. Okay, if we have this one class. Okay. Now, this one, we have this a phosphate and then we have an alcohol. Okay. Now, if ang alcohol punan pagyud nato na siya amino group, when we say amino group, amino, it has an NH. Okay, N. Nitrogen, NH2, NH3, that's amino. Basta amino, when you say amino, nitrogen na siya. Okay, now when this alcohol is OH. When we have an alcohol attached to a nitrogen or depending on nitrogen, we have choline, ethanolamine, and we have the serine. Now we call that one phosphatidylcholines. And then we have ethanolamines, and we have phosphatidylserines. Okay, so we have this one. Now, this is your glycerol, okay, your purple. In purple color, glycerol, fatty acid. Fatty acid. Okay, determine this fatty acid. Tagay kong structural notation. Structural notation, ani nga fatty acid? We have Ernie.
Ma'am, puti siya, ma'am.
Okay, what is this fatty acid? Structural notation,
Ma'am,
Ernie.
puti ra siya,
Katong
ma'am.
kana. Puti gihapon.
tigyapon, ma'am.
Nicole!
Ma'am, imong gikuha na imong screen, ma'am.
Okay, so tagay ko ay nag-structural notation. We have Ernie. Ani nga fatty
Kani
acid? Kani number 1.
kuan, ma'am. One, wait, 1, 2, 3. C18, ma'am, tapos nani
Unsa-unsa?
puti. Puti na po siya balik, ma'am. C18 and O3.
O3 as a O3. 18 na ni kabuk ning carbon. Okay, when I say structural,
18, ma'am.
okay, notation, wala kog notation. So 18 is to
3.
3. Asa ba 3?
Zero.
Zero,
Ay,
ma'am.
Wala man
0.
siya. Man siya ka.
Okay, now Ernie, ang kanang isunod nimo kumuha na ka is number of double bonds. Wala may double bonds, so that is 0. 18 is to 0. Okay, what about this one, Ernie? Kani kaduha nga fatty
Ah,
acid.
yes, ma'am.
18 siya po siya, ma'am. 18
18 is
siya.
to 0 gyapon, ma'am.
Okay, so we have that one. All right, so this your glycerol na kaning purple color, your fatty acids, and then we have your phosphate. Okay, now we know that with your phosphate, okay, so we have that one. Wait sa. Now, kiha, same na siya, same na ni fatty acid o glycerol. Now, when we have our phosphate, without this one, this one, this is your alcohol alcohol group. Okay, this is your alcohol group. Now, if we have this one, wala ning nasa blue, we call this structure as ito to? Phosphatidyl. Phosphatidyl. We call this one as phosphatidyl. Okay, ha? Phosphatidyl. I'll write that one. Phosphatidyl. Now, the next thing is you will determine unsay sunod. Now, what is this structure? What is this molecule? Okay, what is that molecule? Now, let's take a look here. All right. So we have three molecules, amino molecules. We have choline. This is your choline, your ethanolamine, and your serine. So, kato ganina, unsa to siya? Take a look, ana. Now, let's go back. So, unsa ni siya?
Kuan siya, ma'am. Colleen.
Colin siya, ma'am.
Choline. Okay, so now that's that time. Yes, it's choline. Choline. Choline, sure? Tanaw, tarong ninyo, class.
Ma'am, dili kito maklaro tong katong mga ethanol sa to.
Okay, ni. Sige, sige, sige. Nara sa babaw ha. Choline, ethanolamine, and serine. So, unsa ning nasa kwan, class? Okay. Now you take note of the difference. We have OH. Na siya OH also. O, CH2, CH2, CH2. Na po CH2. Na N. Na siya N. Now, the thing that connected, that bonded to our nitrogen here is this one. Dako kayo ng molecule, CH3. But while here, it's only H3. Okay ha, mo na difference sa imong ethanolamine and then your choline. For your serine, we have carboxylate ion. Di ba? COO, COOH man na siya, carboxylic acid. But wala may H, so that's an ion, na negative carboxylate ion. So you have your carboxylate ion. So see the differences, class. Now, here, is this a choline or ethanolamine?
Ethanolamin na siya, ma'am.
Ethanolamine, ma'am.
Okay, so the next thing you will write is phosphatidyl
Lam
ethanolamine. So this whole thing is a phosphatidyl ethanolamine. Okay. Okay na. Now, what if akong iban kay kakatong choline? Himuon ako ni siya diri og CH3. So mahimo siyang choline. So what's the name? So what will be the name? If ilisa na ko ni siya dire og ano. So the name will be phosphatidyl.
Choline, ma'am. Choline. Phosphatidylcholine.
Okay, phosphatidylcholine. That's it. All right. Wow. I thank you. Hmm. Okay, so that's it. Then we have this one. Okay, your membrane lipids. We have phospholipids. Okay, this one. Then we have glycerol phospholipid. All right. So we have the difference between glycerol phospholipids and triacyl glycerol. We have Joshua. Nabay na Joshua.
Kanang excuse me, ma'am.
Oh.
Kanang ma'am, muklase na si Sarap na mo, ma'am.
Ah, sige, sige. Bye-bye. Kay magklase na pod ko. Si Sir Ralph, then you have physics.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Ma'am, pwede pa send me ani sa files, ma'am, kay sa Google Classroom bitaw, ma'am. Video ra ang imong na-post, ma'am.
Na may lipids to.
Kanang, okay, ma'am.
I-check daw ninyong balik. Tanawan
Kuan,
ninyo.
kuan lagi siya dito, ma'am. Kanang part 1, lipids, katurag yung video, ma'am.
Okay, sige, sige. Pasend na ako dito. Magklases ako. Sige, bye-bye class. Thank you so much. Alright,
Bye,
ready?
ma'am.
Pag-earn mo kay exam or on lipids this coming Friday.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, okay,
Okay,
ma'am.
so
Thank
you
you, ma'am.
study.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much for attending our lesson. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Bye, ma'am.
ma'am. God bless.
Goodbye, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.